A school shooting is an attack at an educational institution, such as a school or university, involving the use of a firearm. Incidents that involve 4 or more deaths are also categorized as mass shootings. School shootings have sparked a political debate over gun violence, zero-tolerance policies, and gun control. The United States has the highest number of school-related shootings. Possible underlying causes: younger age, Rain 2002, Steinberg 2002, Deacon, Overman, 2004, Figner et al. 2009, Burnett et al. 2010. According to Rain, 2002, immaturity is one of many identified factors increasing the likelihood of an individual committing criminal acts of violence and outbursts of aggression. This fact is supported by findings on brain development occurring as individuals age from birth. According to the Australian-based Raising Children Network and Centre for Adolescent Health, and a number of other sources, the main change occurring in the developing brain during adolescence is the so-called pruning of unused connections in thinking and processing. While this is occurring within the brain, retained connections are strengthened. Synaptic pruning occurs because the nervous system in humans develops by firstly, the overproducing of parts of the nervous system, axons, neurons, and synapses, to then later in the development of the nervous system, make redundant the superfluous parts, i.e. pruning, or apoptosis, otherwise known as cell death. These changes occur in certain parts of the brain. Firstly, the prefrontal cortex, the brain location where decision-making occurs, is the concluding area for development. While the prefrontal cortex is developing, children and teenagers might possibly rely more on the brain part known as the amygdala, involving thinking that is more emotionally active, including aggression and impulsiveness. As a consequence, each individual is more likely to want to make riskier, i.e. risk, choices which are more risky, or to make more risky choices. Steinberg, 2004, identified the fact of adolescents taking more risks typically than adults. Deacon et al. 2004, and Overman et al. 2004, indicate a decline in risk-taking from adolescence to adulthood. Steinberg, 2005, Figner et al. 2009, and Burnett et al. 2010, identified adolescent-age individuals as more likely to take risks than young children and adults. Gun ownership. Evidence shows the number of deaths by guns in any population correlates to the number of guns owned within the same population. However, some countries with high numbers of gun owners also have very low gun-related deaths, such as Iceland. Profiling. The United States Secret Service published a study regarding 37 school shooting incidents in the United States from 1974 through June 2000, which warned against the belief that a certain type of student would be a perpetrator. According to the study, any profile could apply to any student and might not apply to a potential perpetrator. Some perpetrators were children of divorce, or lived in foster homes, or came from intact families. A few were loners, but most had close friends. Some experts such as Alan Lippman have warned against the dearth of empirical validity of profiling methods. While it may be simplistic to assume a straightforward profile, the study did find certain similarities among the perpetrators. The researchers found that killers do not snap. They plan. They acquire weapons. These children take a long, considered, public path toward violence. Oftentimes, shooters are inspired by past shootings as motivation for the method of executing these attacks, from the guns to purchase down to the what to wear during the attack. Princeton's Catherine Newman has found that, far from being loners, the perpetrators are joiners whose attempts at social integration fail, and that they let their thinking and even their plans be known, sometimes frequently over long periods of time. In addition, psychologist Peter Langman has noted that school shooters typically fall into one, or occasionally two, of three categories: psychopathic, psychotic, or traumatized. An angle that is not mentioned in media but is bolstered by important social scientists is dysfunctional family structure. Eminent Harvard sociologist Robert J. Sampson wrote, family structure is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, predictor of variations in urban violence across cities in the United States. His views are echoed by the eminent criminologists Michael Gottfredson and Travis Hirschi, who have written that such family measures as the percentage of the population divorced, the percentage of households headed by women, and the percentage of unattached individuals in the community are among the most powerful predictors of crime rates. According to Dr. Peter Langman, it is a myth that school shooters come from stable homes, and showed that in one sample, 82% of the shooters were from dysfunctional families, while 18% from intact families. Perpetrators who run amok in schools and other public settings do also share in common a severe lapse or more pervasive deficit in their capacity for empathy coupled with their inability to contain their aggression. This may be due to their psychopathy, psychotic symptoms, i.e. loss of a sense of reality, or to a consequence of significant violent traumatization such as that of early physical abuse, that contributes to the development of dissociative states of mind, i.e. disavowal of reality, derealization, depersonalization. In short, as clinical psychiatrist Daniel Schechter has written, for a baby to develop into a troubled adolescent who then turns lethally violent, a convergence of multiple interacting factors must occur, that is every bit as complicated, as it is for a tornado to form on a beautiful spring day in Kansas. Many of the shooters told Secret Service investigators that alienation or persecution drove them to violence. According to the United States Secret Service, one trait that has not yet attracted as much attention is the gender difference. Nearly all school shootings are perpetrated by young males, and in some instances the violence has clearly been gender-specific. Bob Herbert addressed this in an October 2006 New York Times editorial. However, at least 3 female school shooting incidents have been documented, including Lori Dan of Winnetka, Illinois. Though the perpetrators of school shootings are often said to be almost exclusively white males, this is misleading. A study of 48 shooters found that though white males constituted 79% of secondary school shooters, white males were actually a minority among college and other adult perpetrators. There is significant racial, ethnic, and gender diversity among school shooters. These shootings have happened in suburban and rural school districts, and many seem to be random with random targets. Most of these shooters tend to come from 2-parent households and have been found to appear on the honor roll at their schools. School shootings receive extensive media coverage and are frequent in the U.S., see list below. They have sometimes resulted in nationwide changes of schools' policies concerning discipline and security. Some experts have described fears about school shootings as a type of moral panic. Such incidents may also lead to nationwide discussion on gun laws. School bullying. Bullying is common in schools and seemed to play a role in the lives of many of the school shooters. A typical bullying interaction consists of 3 parts: the offender/bully, a victim, and 1 or more bystanders. This formula of 3 enables the bully to easily create public humiliation for their victim. Students who are bullied tend to develop behavioral problems, depression, less self-control and poorer social skills, and to do worse in school. Once humiliated, victims never want to be a victim again and try to regain their image by joining groups. Often, they are rejected by their peers and follow through by restoring justice in what they see as an unjust situation. Their plan for restoration many times results in violence, as shown by the school shooters. 75% of school shooters claimed or left behind evidence of them being victims of bullying, including Nathan Ferris, Eric Harris, and Dylan Cobalt, Edmar Aparecido Freitas, Brian Head, Seung-Hwei Cho, Wellington Menezes Oliveira, Jeff Wise, Adam Lanza, and Nicholas Cruz. Cyberbullying has changed the effect of bullying in another way. In the modern era, a bully can also do so on Facebook and Twitter for the world to see. Once something is on the internet, it cannot truly be removed, further enhancing the torment. That type of bullying is infinitely easier for the perpetrator to commit and just as infinitely hard for the victim to address or escape. Notoriety. Shooting massacres in English-speaking countries often occur close together in time. Forensic psychiatrists attribute this to copycat behavior, which can be correlated with the level of media exposure. In these copycat shootings, oftentimes the perpetrators see a past school shooter as an idol, so they want to carry out an even more destructive, murderous shooting in hopes of gaining recognition or respect. Some mass murderers study media reports of previous killers. Research has now shown the presence of a direct correlation between a desire for infamy and school shootings. This hypothesis was suggested by Justin Nutt in 2013. Those who feel as though they are alone and who feel no one will remember them may seek to be remembered through acts of violence. Nutt explains through the examination of the way in which news exposure is connected not to the victims, but the perpetrators. In an age of internet news and 24-hour news cycle, to avoid doing so would be seen as poor news reporting, but it also means those who feel nameless and as though no one will care or remember them when they are gone may feel doing something such as a school shooting will make sure they are remembered and listed in the history books. This has been linked as a leading cause of most school shootings and planned, but unexecuted school shooting. Recent premeditative writings were presented according to court documents and showed Joshua O'Connor wrote that he wanted the death count to be as high as possible so that the shooting would be infamous. Infamy and notoriety, a desire to be remembered, has been reported as the leading reason for planned shootings by most perpetrators who were taken alive either pre or post-shooting. Injustice collectors. In a 2015 New Republic essay, Columbine author Dave Cullen described a subset of school shooters, and other mass murderers, known as injustice collectors. The essay described and expanded on the work of retired FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, who has published a peer-reviewed journal article on the subject. It also quoted Gary Nosner, who helped create and lead the FBI's hostage negotiation unit, and served as chief negotiator for 10 years. Mental illness. The degree to which mental illness does or does not contribute to school shootings has been debated in society. Although the vast majority of mentally ill individuals are nonviolent, some evidence has suggested that mental illness or mental health symptoms are nearly universal among school shooters. For example, on April 16, 2007, a Virginia Tech, VT, student named Seung-Hwae Cho shot and killed 32 faculty members and students on the campus and injured 25 more before taking his own life. For another instance, a 2002 report by the U.S. Secret Service and U.S. Department of Education found evidence that a majority of school shooters displayed evidence of mental health symptoms, often undiagnosed or untreated. Criminologists Fox and Delatour note that mental illness is only part of the issue, however, and mass shooters tend to externalize their problems, blaming others, and are unlikely to seek psychiatric help, even if available. Other scholars have concluded that mass murderers display a common constellation of chronic mental health symptoms, chronic anger or antisocial traits, and a tendency to blame others for problems. However, they note that attempting to profile school shooters with such a constellation of traits will likely result in many false positives, as many individuals with such a profile do not engage in violent behaviors. McGinty and colleagues conducted a study to find out if people tended to associate the violence of school shootings with mental illness, at the expense of other factors such as the availability of high-capacity magazines. Nearly 2,000 participants read a news piece on a shooting in which the shooter is diagnosed as having a mental illness and who used high-capacity magazines. One group read an article that presented only the facts of the case. A different group read an article about the same shooting, but in it the author advocated for gun restrictions for people with mental illness. Another group read about the shooting in an article that suggested the proposal to ban large-capacity magazines, which acted to advocate that shootings could stem from a societal problem rather than an individual problem. The control group did not read anything. Participants were then all asked to fill out a questionnaire asking about their views on gun control and whether they thought there should be restrictions on high-capacity magazines. 71% of the control group thought that gun restrictions should be applied to people with mental illness, and nearly 80% of participants who read the articles agreed. Despite the fact that the article exposed the readers to both the mental illness of the shooter, and the fact that the shooter used high-capacity magazines, participants advocated more for gun restrictions on people with mental illness rather than bans on high-capacity magazines. This suggests that people believe mental illness is the culprit for school shootings in lieu of the accessibility of guns or other environmental factors. The authors expressed concern that proposals to target gun control laws at people with mental illness do not take into account the complex nature of the relationship between serious mental illness and violence, much of which is due to additional factors such as substance abuse. However, the link is unclear since research has shown that violence in mentally ill people occur more in interpersonal environments. Violent video game use. It has long been debated that there exists a correlation between school shooting perpetrators and the type of media they consume. A popular profile for school shooters is someone who has been exposed to or enjoys playing violent video games. However, this profile is considered by many researchers to be misguided or erroneous. Ferguson, 2009, has argued that a third variable of gender explains the illusory correlation between video game use and the type of people who conduct school shootings. Ferguson explains that the majority of school shooters are young males, who are considerably more aggressive than the rest of the population. A majority of gamers are also young males. Thus, it appears likely that the view that school shooters are often people who play violent video game is more simply explained by the third variable of gender. The idea of profiling school shooters by the video games they play comes from the erroneous belief that playing violent video games increase a person's aggression level, which in turn, can cause people to perpetrate extreme acts of violence, such as a school shooting. There is little to no data supporting this hypothesis, Ferguson, 2009, but it has become a vivid profile used by the media since the Columbine massacre in 1999. A summation of past research on video game violence find that video games have low to no effect on aggression, Anderson 2004, Ferguson, 2007 and Spencer, 2009. Again, this supports the idea that although it is a popular opinion to link school shooters to being violent video gamers, this misconception is often attributable to third variables and has not been supported by research on the connection between aggression and gaming. Ultimately, this type of profiling is popular in media but not supported by any data, Anderson, 2004. Frequency trends. Beginning in the late 1990s, there has been a steep increase in the frequency of school shootings across the globe. In the United States specifically, the most recent trend has been downward following the spikes of the 1990s, yet at the same time they are trending towards a higher likelihood of being premeditated and executed with a strict plan in mind. Differences globally. United States. School shootings are considered an overwhelmingly American phenomenon due to the availability of firearms in the United States. Infamous school shootings that occurred in the United States include the 1966 University of Texas Tower shooting, the 1999 Columbine High School massacre, the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting, and the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Other school shootings that resulted in multiple casualties occurred at Northern Illinois University in 2008 and Santana High School in 2001, along with Red Lake Senior High School in 2005, Umpqua Community College in 2015, Marshall County High School in 2018, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. There were 11 firearm-related events that occurred at a school or campus in the first 23 days of 2018. 19th century. 1840s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. November 12, 1840, Charlottesville, Virginia. 10 John Anthony Gardner Davis, a law professor at the University of Virginia, was shot by student Joseph Semmes, and died from his wound 3 days later. 1850s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. November 2, 1853, Louisville, Kentucky. 01 Student Matthew Ward took a pistol to school, where he shot the schoolmaster Mr. Butler as revenge for what Ward thought was excessive punishment of his brother the day before. Ward was acquitted. August 16, 1856, Florence, Alabama. 20 The schoolmaster had a tame sparrow and had warned the students not to harm it, threatening death. One of the boys stepped on the bird and killed it. He was afraid to return to school but did so. After lessons, the master took the boy into a private room and strangled him to death. The boy's father went to the school and shot the schoolmaster dead. July 8, 1858, Baltimore, Maryland. 10 The 15-year-old son of Colonel John T. Farlow, Baltimore's Marshal of Police 1867-70, was killed during a Sabbath school gathering. The perpetrator escaped, but several arrests were made. 1860s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. January 21, 1860, Todd County, Kentucky. 10 A son of Colonel Elijah Sibrey was killed by another student. Young Sibrey was threatening the other boy and said he intended to kill him. The other student got a gun and walked up to Sibrey in the schoolhouse, where he killed him. February 6, 1864, Ashland County, Ohio. 10 George W. Longfelt, the school teacher of the Pfeiffer's schoolhouse, killed student Alfred Deasem and fled. February 16, 1867, Knights Ferry, California. 20 Mr. McGinnis was killed by his daughter's teacher after McGinnis threatened the teacher for expelling his daughter from school. When McGinnis' son learned of this, he went to the school and killed the teacher. April 2, 1867, Madison, Florida. 10 Frank Pope, a pupil at the St. John's Seminary, killed his teacher Mr. Bristow with a pistol. June 8, 1867, New York City, New York. 01 13-year-old Arthur Day, secretly took a loaded pistol to public school number 18 to shoot a dog he said had bitten him. While playing with the pistol, Day accidentally injured classmate Robert Morton. December 22, 1868, Chattanooga, Tennessee. 30 A boy who refused to be whipped by his teacher left the school. The next day he returned with his brother and a friend for revenge. Not finding the teacher at the school, they continued to his house, where a gun battle took place and 3 died. Only the original boy who initiated the attack survived. 1870s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. January 27, 1871, Knoxville, Tennessee. 10 John Roberts, aged 10 or 12, accidentally had one of his eyes shot out at school and died. February 1, 1872, Washington, Pennsylvania. 01 At the All-Girls Union School, 17-year-old Thomas McGiffin shot and seriously wounded the principal, Professor Wilson, in the hip because the professor refused to deliver a note to one of the young ladies for him. McGiffin was a son of Colonel Norton McGiffin, and brother of U.S. naval hero Philo McGiffin. February 11, 1873, Wisconsin. 01 Chris Foote shot the school mistress for whipping his son. February 20, 1874, Agency, Montana. 10 After being ejected from school for disobedience, 20-year-old Thomas Squires fatally shot Professor Hayes in the abdomen 3 times without warning. April 9, 1874, Lebanon, Tennessee. 10 John R. Breckinridge, son of the late Robert Jefferson Breckinridge, attending classes in law at Cumberland University in Lebanon, Tennessee, was killed by John L. Anderson, the mayor's son. The latter was reportedly crazed with liquor. May 24, 1878, St. Paul, Minnesota. 01 A 12-year-old boy, Luckert, accidentally wounded Allie McDonald, another boy at the Neal School. The bullet passed out, and the youth was expected to recover. His mother, Mrs. McDonald, went to the police station, but did not file a formal complaint. May 24, 1879, Lancaster, New York. 01 Telegraph operator Frank Shugart, severely injured Mr. Carr, superintendent of the stables at a girls' school. 1880s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. December 1, 1881, Santa Monica, California. 10 While working late on the program for the children's concert at the schoolhouse, the schoolmaster Mr. O'Donnell and one of the parents got into an argument. The parent, Mr. Williams, pulled a gun and fatally shot O'Donnell in the back. December 22, 1881, Shelby County, Indiana. 00 School teacher Charles J. Gregory shot at a pupil at close range because he refused to write on a slate. The bullet missed the boy. The teacher was arrested. January 16, 1882, Iola, Kansas. 00 A group of boys shot into a schoolhouse, but no one was hurt. 2 of the boys were arrested and pleaded guilty 3 weeks later. They were fined $9 each. April 13, 1882 Huntsville, Texas 01 G.W. Gray, a student at the Sam Houston Normal School, wounded another student, M.J. Jordan. They were arguing over a comic Valentine. February 14, 1883 Florence, Nebraska 03 As some children were playing and throwing snowballs outside the Ponca Creek schoolhouse, 3 young men pulled up in a wagon. They engaged the children in a snowball fight. When they were leaving, one of the men, Lem Harbaugh, pointed his .45 caliber needle gun at the children, accidentally shooting and wounding 3 of them. Feeling great remorse, Harbaugh later surrendered himself to the authorities. November 20, 1883 Barber County, Kansas 00 A bunch of drunken cowboys stopped at several schoolhouses, forcing 2 teachers to drink whiskey and firing numerous shots at 3 schoolhouses. February 28, 1884 Danville, Virginia 02 As Alan Womack, a 15-year-old boy, drove by a Negro schoolhouse, he called out "school butter," an insult meaning a copying, or a whipping. The school students ran out and attacked him, firing several shots at him. He returned fire, hitting 2 students. March 6, 1884 Boston, Massachusetts 00 As news of outlaw Jesse James reached the East Coast, young boys started to imitate him. For instance, boys armed with guns shot at police investigating their activities at the Concord Street Schoolhouse. March 15, 1884 Gainesville, Georgia 00 In the middle of the day, a group of very drunk Jackson County farmers were shooting their revolvers as they headed down the street, driving people into their homes. As they approached the female academy, the girls fled from the yard into the school. The gang followed and fired several rounds into the front door, but no one was hurt. June 12, 1887 Cleveland, Tennessee 10 Will Guess went to the school and killed Miss Irene Fan, his little sister's teacher, for whipping her the day before. June 13, 1889 New Brunswick, New Jersey 00 Charles Crawford, upset over an argument with a school trustee, went up to the window and fired a pistol into a crowded schoolroom. The bullet lodged in the wall just above the teacher's head. 1890s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. April 24, 1890 Brazil, Indiana 01 While the pupils of the Meridian Street School were at play, Ben Corbury drew a revolver and seriously wounded 10-year-old Cora Brubach in the face. The girl had told the teacher of Ben's misconduct. December 27, 1890 Stanton, Virginia 10 At the Cable's Military Academy, a 15-year-old student, A.H. Hathaway of Denison, Texas, was accidentally killed by his 17-year-old classmate James Whitworth of Sulphur Springs, Texas, while they were playing with an old pistol. March 30, 1891 Liberty, Mississippi 014 During a school exhibition and concert given at the Parson Hill Schoolhouse, where the large audience was composed of blacks and whites, teachers, pupils, and spectators, an unknown gunman fired a double-barreled shotgun into the assemblage. 14 people were wounded, some seriously. April 9, 1891 Newburgh, New York 0. 70-year-old James Foster, fired a shotgun at a group of students in the playground of St. Mary's Parochial School, causing minor injuries to several of the students. June 29, 1892 Van Wert, Ohio 10 Convoy teacher, B.L. Ritchie, was killed by 14-year-old student, Shirley Longsworth, son of Dr. Longsworth. October 10, 1892 Lawrence, Kansas 02 At the University of Kansas, 2 students, E. Higgins and Jack Craycroft, were injured as they were walking back to their dorm rooms after football practice. Law student Fred Bassett fired a double-barreled shotgun as they passed his home. He said he had warned them not to trespass on his farm, which students frequently did. March 26, 1893 Plain Dealing, Louisiana 4-1 During an evening school dance at Plain Dealing High School, a fight broke out. When the smoke cleared, 2 students were killed, 2 more were fatally wounded, and the high school's Professor Johnson was wounded in the arm. October 17, 1894 Parkersburg, West Virginia 2-0 when school was let out, 15-year-old Willis Gardner, was killed and his 8-year-old brother fatally stabbed in a quarrel among a group of boys. December 13, 1898 Charleston, West Virginia 6-1 during the school exhibition, a group of young men tried to break up a student performance. When the teacher Fisher tried to throw them out, they turned on him. Audience members joined the fray. The fight resulted in deaths. Harry Flasher was shot in the heart and instantly killed, Henry Carney was fatally shot in the back, Ralph Jones and 2 others were also fatally shot, and George Gibson was shot in the hand, Hez Harding had his skull crushed and several others received minor wounds. 20th century. 1900s. Date, location, deaths, injuries, description. February 24, 1903 Inman, South Carolina 10 Edward Foster, a 17-year-old student at Inman High School, was fatally wounded by his teacher Reuben Pitts after jerking a rod from Pitts' hands to avoid punishment. According to the teacher, Foster struck the pistol Pitts had drawn, and caused it to fire. Pitts was acquitted of murder on grounds of self-defense. July 21, 1903 Jackson, Kentucky 2-1 at the Cave Run School. James Barrett and Mac Howard argued over a card game and fought a duel with pistols. They killed each other. 12-year-old student, James Vyres, was shot in the abdomen while sitting at his desk during the gunfight. April 6, 1904 Chicago, Illinois 102 students had been fighting for most of a year over a girl. In their last fight, Henry Shays threw 16-year-old Paul Jellick to the ground, drew a revolver, and killed his rival. November 16, 1904 Riverside, California 2-1 at the Indian School, a gunfight broke out between pupils. Charles Colby was shot in the head with a pistol, then returned fire, killing Tom Buchananrose instantly, and fatally wounding Fred Smith. December 16, 1904 Magee, Mississippi 1 parent, E. E. Mangum, was shot through the head and killed by the principal of the high school, Professor J. E. Woodward. Mangum had argued with Woodward, who had given Mangum's 15-year-old son a severe whipping. Mangum lost his temper, shooting Woodward through the wrist. February 9, 1905 Colusa, California 0-1 at the request of his childhood friend, Pearl Cruz, 17-year-old Elmer Hildreth, who did not attend her school, went to a meeting between Miss Cruz and her teacher. It ended in a hand-to-hand encounter between teacher and pupil. When Ingram went after Hildreth with an axe, Hildreth shot him in the stomach. Hildreth was arrested and bail was posted by 5 prominent men in the community. Hildreth was found to have acted in self-defense and no charges were filed. Ingram survived. October 5, 1905 Hickman, Kentucky 0-0 while returning from church, Professor Emmett W. Roach, was ambushed by an assassin. March 23, 1907 Carmi, Illinois 1-0 parent George Nicholson killed John Curd at a schoolhouse during a school rehearsal. Curd had made a disparaging remark about Nicholson's daughter during her recital. December 20, 1907 Chico, California 9-year-old Arthur Roberts, was shot in the head and killed outside his school during a military drill by school children of the Dayton School District. Armed with old guns believed to be empty, the children had pulled their triggers. The Roberts boy threw his hands to his head and cried, "I'm shot." January 10, 1908 Council Bluffs, Iowa 0-0 at around 6 a.m., as G.E.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.